Billy Hitchcock's end proves that death rarely misses twice. He was one of Flight 180's survivors, content to stay out of the drama, yet the pattern still closed in. On a rain-soaked night, he rides with Alex, Clear, and Carter. Emotions are raw. Carter stops his Chevy on active train tracks, the crossing lights flashing and horns screaming in the distance. The engine stalls, his seatbelt locks, and panic replaces his bravado. Alex yanks him free just before the train obliterates the car. Metal shards and sparks scatter across the road. Billy exhales, thinking the danger has passed, until a spinning steel fragment slices clean through his neck, dropping him where he stands. And if that wasn't warning enough for Luton, nothing ever would be. Valerie Luton's death reminds us that running from death only shortens the distance it needs to travel. A teacher at Mount Abraham High, she was among those pulled off Flight 180 after Alex Browning's vision. That survival marked her as next in the sequence. Packing to leave town, she hoped to break the chain. In her kitchen, a cracked mug leaked vodka across the counter, dripping into her computer. The spill caused a violent explosion, driving glass into her throat. Bleeding, she staggered back as sparks from a burning leaf pile outside ignited the vodka trail. Fire surged to the stove, a vodka bottle burst, and a burning towel pulled a knife block down. The falling blade pierced her chest. Seconds later, the house exploded. The flames hadn't even cooled before death moved on. Terry Chaney cheated death once. She wasn't planning to live in fear forever. Her death proves that disbelief is no shield. Death will finish its plan whether you accept it or not. At the cafe, she argued with Alex, calling his constant watch for danger pointless. Carter's arrival only made things worse, and the talk turned bitter. She announced she was leaving in weeks, tired of feeling like prey. With a sharp drop-dead aimed at Carter, she spun away from the table and stepped into the street. A bus tore through the lane, hidden until the last second. It struck her with crushing force, throwing blood against the cafe window. Death had waited in silence, striking in the exact second her guard was down. The shock hadn't even worn off when Death shifted focus to someone who thought she could pack up and outrun it. Todd Wagner was Alex Browning's best friend, and one of the few who stepped off Flight 180 before it exploded. Todd's death proves that sometimes the real killer is patience. He escaped once due to Alex's vision, but that only delayed the inevitable. In his bathroom, it starts with a drip from the toilet. Nothing alarming. In the mirror, he notices a nick on his neck, then hears the drip again. The puddle spreads. He reaches for laundry above the tub. One slip on wet tile and he's down. The clothesline catches his neck, pantyhose digging in. It's quiet until he starts fighting. Shampoo spills, sending him sliding in slow, desperate motions towards suffocation. The scissors are just out of reach. Eyes red, gasps short. The fight fades. Outside, nothing has changed. The world calls it suicide. Death calls it payback. Todd's body was barely cold before Death found a far more public way to make its next move. Carter Horton is in Paris, still convinced he's untouchable. Sitting at a cafe with Alex and Clear, he brags about beating Death's game. In his mind, Alex is the next name on the list. The signs start building. A meat truck unloading in the street, a pigeon slamming into scaffolding, a heater flame jumping higher than it should, glass showering the pavement. Alex tenses, Carter doesn't. A massive sheet of glass crashes down nearby. Above, the cafe's neon sign groans on loose bolts. Then a bus smashes into a pole, shaking the sign free. It swings toward Alex. Carter shoves him clear, grinning like he just proved his point. The sign swings back. One brutal arc slams him into the pavement, sparks bursting as the glowing 180 hovers over the wreck of his body. Carter didn't cheat the list. He just delayed the count. Final Destination 2 opens with a new set of lives marked for the list. Among them is Evan Lewis, a recent lottery winner who believed his fortune made him untouchable. He was saved from the Route 23 pileup when Kimberly Corman's sudden vision stopped him from entering the highway. That escape only bought him time. Fresh from a shopping spree, Evan sets his bags down, cranks up the music, and starts cooking shirtless in his apartment. While checking messages, his lucky horseshoe ring slips into the garbage disposal. He reaches in to grab it, distracted as oil on the stove bursts into flames. He fumbles for the extinguisher, but it sputters uselessly. The fire spreads. Smoke fills the room. He smashes a window, climbs to the fire escape, and breathes a shaky sigh. Then his apartment explodes, launching him to the street. Dazed but alive, he starts to stand. The fire escape ladder drops, driving straight into his eye. Luck just ran out. Evan's flames hadn't even died before Death set its sights on Kat. Kat Jennings always thought she could control her fate. A sharp mind, a quick wit, and a knack for sarcasm made her feel untouchable. Surviving the Route 23 pileup only fed that illusion. But survival in this world is just a brief pause, not immunity. Pinned in her SUV after a violent crash, Kat complains about the loud hydraulic tool pressing against the car frame. Her sharp words barely mask her pain. The firefighter strains to pry the jammed door, unaware that the damaged airbag is a ticking hazard. When the airbag erupts with explosive force, Kat's head is slammed backward. The broken headrest has left a jagged metal pipe positioned perfectly. The impact drives it through the back of her skull in an instant. Blood and shock ripple through the scene. Fellow survivors can only gape as her body goes limp, the cigarette she held dropping to the shattered floor. Even as her life ends, death has already fixed its gaze elsewhere. Tim Carpenter's death shows how quick curiosity can turn into catastrophe. He was one of the lucky few pulled from the Route 23 pileup after Kimberly Corman's vision, but death had his number. At the Ellis Medical Complex, Tim walks out with his mom, Nora, half listening as she talks about his x-rays. His eyes drift, locking on a cluster of pigeons nearby. With a quick pigeon, he charges toward them, scattering the birds in a flurry of wings. The sudden commotion startles a construction worker overhead. His elbow knocks a lever, sending a massive pane of glass swinging from a crane. Tim freezes, staring up as voices scream for him to move. The glass drops, slamming into him with crushing force. Shards and red mist burst into the air. Nora grabs what's left of his shirt, her screams cutting through the stunned silence. And death, patient as ever, was already circling closer. Clear Rivers and Eugene Dix were seconds away from paying for the lives they had narrowly escaped. Clear had survived Flight 180 and learned the hard truth. You can cheat death, but it never forgets. Eugene, a teacher who dodged the Route 23 pileup, was about to see that lesson in the most violent way possible. At Lakeview Hospital, the survivors were distracted by the chaos of labor and medical emergencies. A loose cord from Eugene's life support machine, combined with a leaking oxygen tank and a spark from the socket, created a deadly mix. Clear rushed in to save him, unknowingly completing the chain reaction. The resulting explosion engulfed both in flames. Clear was thrown down the hallway while Eugene's body was obliterated in the blast. In Death's world, timing is everything. Somewhere else, a new chain of events was quietly building, ready to claim its next target. Rory Peters had always laughed in the face of danger, joking about everything while quietly fearing what came next. The Route 23 crash had spared him once, but survival only postponed what was coming. After their SUV crashes on a remote farm, Rory rushes to save a young boy, yanking him from the path of a reckless news van. His heroism is swift, but it tangles him deeper in Death's design. Kat Jennings' death ignites the disaster. Her cigarette falls onto a gasoline trail leaking from the van. Flames shoot toward the vehicle, and the resulting explosion tears a barbed wire fence free. Rory looks up, stunned, as the wires slice through him, his torso and arm torn apart in seconds. Shock freezes the survivors. The air still smolders when another fate tightens its grip, drawing someone else into Death's chain. Nora Carpenter learned that the hard way. She and her son Tim had already dodged death once, walking away from the Route 23 pileup after Kimberly Corman's warning. But in this game, survival only buys you time. At the Ellis Medical Complex, Nora steps into an elevator with a man carrying a basket of prosthetic limbs, one fitted with a sharp hook. Moments later, she rushes out, panicked, then makes the fatal choice to step back toward the doors. The hook catches in her braid. The doors clamp shut around her neck, and the elevator moves, severing her head in one horrifying snap. Somewhere in that chaos, Brian's clock had already started ticking. Brian Gibbons, a teenage boy from a quiet farm, learned the hard way that cheating death only delays the inevitable. His life was spared once when Rory Peters pulled him out of the path of a speeding news van, but that single act put him on Death's radar. The day seems calm as Brian tends the barbecue, chatting with his parents and the survivors. Laughter fills the backyard, and for a moment, it feels like normal life has returned. His father praises Rory for saving Brian, a reminder that their interference has consequences. Kimberly and Thomas exchange uneasy glances, sensing the invisible trap closing in. Then it happens. The faulty propane grill explodes violently. Brian is obliterated instantly, the force of the blast throwing the family back. His severed arm lands gruesomely on the table, and screams pierce the air. Even in a moment of calm, death finds its way. The explosion is sudden and merciless, leaving no one untouched by its force. The backyard, once filled with laughter, is now a scene of shock and horror. This brutal event serves as the chilling conclusion to Final Destination 2, reminding us that no one truly escapes. With Part 2 complete, the story now shifts forward, setting the stage for the next chapter in Death's relentless design in Part 3. Ashley Freund and Ashlyn Halperin thought surviving the Devil's flight crash meant safety, but Death does not forgive mistakes. Their luck was only temporary. The scene opens in a bright tanning salon. Ashley and Ashlyn are carefree, getting ready for a session while the manager is distracted by a phone call. A cold drink drips onto the power panel, starting a chain reaction. A gust of wind knocks over a coat rack, which hits a decorative palm tree. The tree topples a shelf that slams against the door, trapping them inside. The beds begin to overheat. Ashley falls through the bottom of her tanning bed onto exposed wires, electrocuted, and bursts into flames. Ashlyn is consumed next as the metal frame of her bed explodes, flames engulfing her helplessly. The screams fade as the fire consumes them both, leaving a horrifying silence. With their deaths, the relentless pattern of death continues, now turning toward McKinley for the next fatal chapter. Ian McKinley thought surviving the roller coaster crash meant he was untouchable. Cynical, sarcastic, and dismissive of Wendy's warnings, he ignored the danger around him. Death, however, does not forgive arrogance. The scene takes place at the tricentennial celebration. Fireworks explode, illuminating the night as Wendy, Kevin, and Julie struggle on the ground from earlier chaos. Ian wanders nearby, mocking Wendy, confident he cannot die. He laughs, teases, and points, claiming Death skipped him. Then the fireworks truck erupts violently. Sparks fly and debris scatters in every direction. A massive metal pole holding the McKinley Celebrates banner wobbles ominously above him. Ian freezes for just a moment, but it's too late. The pole crashes down with brutal force, crushing him instantly. Blood spreads across the grass, and his screams echo briefly before silence returns. Wendy and the others lie in shock, realizing once again that Death's design cannot be avoided. Not far away, the attention shifts to Luis. Luis Romero thought he was untouchable, a star football player with dreams of Super Bowl glory. Surviving the Devil's flight crash only made him bolder, mocking warnings and daring Death to challenge him. His overconfidence would become his undoing. In the high school gym, Luis pumps iron, boasting about his future and scoffing at Wendy and Kevin's fears. Water spills across the floor. A boombox topples into the puddle, sparking electricity that powers an old fan. Vibrations from a grunting student doing squats shake a wall-mounted wooden sign with crossed swords. As Luis hoists the weights overhead, yelling about his unstoppable strength, one of the swords finally detaches. It swings down like a pendulum, slicing the cables of his machine. The heavy bar drops with brutal force. Luis's defiance ends in a spray of blood, leaving Kevin and Wendy stunned. And just like that, Death has another mark, already eyeing the next victim waiting for their moment. Perry Malinowski was Julie's friend and one of the survivors of the Devil's Flight roller coaster derailment. She thought surviving the crash meant she had cheated Death, but that sense of safety was a lie. Death doesn't forget, and surviving the ride only put her on the list to die. The fair is alive with lights, laughter, and fireworks. Perry is there with Julie when Wendy rushes over, desperate to figure out who Death will claim. As Wendy asks her questions, Perry's unease grows. She realizes too late that all signs point straight at her. A white horse, startled by the fireworks, rears violently, snapping the flagpole it's tied to. The upper half, with the banner "Liberty or Death," launches into the air. Perry freezes in terror as the pole strikes her chest with brutal force. Blood sprays, screams echo, and her body slides down the pole. The chaos at the fair leaves everyone stunned, while Aaron watches from nearby, oblivious to the danger closing in around him. Aaron Ulmer liked to think she was safe, tucked behind Ian, and confident in her smarts. Surviving Devil's Flight gave her a false sense of security, but Death does not forget. Overconfidence would cost her everything. Inside the hardware store, Aaron works while Ian operates a panel saw, ignoring Wendy and Kevin's warnings. A pigeon flutters wildly, knocking into a spinning fan that sparks. Nearby, a forklift moves on its own, tipping containers and hitting shelving that shakes precariously. Plywood slides, wooden planks wobble, and a heavy ladder teeters above. Chaos spreads with every small disturbance. Aaron, caught in the middle, stumbles backward just as a fallen nail gun lands in her path. One misstep triggers it, driving nails into her head and face. Her death is sudden, brutal, and final. Kevin, Wendy, and Ian are frozen, unable to stop the inevitable. With Aaron gone, death turns its attention to the Cheeks. Frankie Cheeks, a recent high school graduate, was known for his obnoxious behavior and obsession with filming others in awkward situations. He survived the Devil's Flight roller coaster crash thanks to Wendy's premonition, but cheating death only put him on its path. His fate is a reminder that no one escapes consequences, and even careless actions can trigger devastating results. At a fast food drive-thru, Frankie waits in his car, oblivious to the danger behind him. A truck left unattended higher up the hill begins to roll after a rock knocks loose its wheel chock. Downhill momentum turns it into a deadly missile. Kevin's truck gets hit, blocking any escape, and the runaway truck smashes into it. The force sends the engine fan hurtling forward. It crashes through Frankie's rear window, striking him in the head, leaving a gruesome, shocking scene of death reclaiming its due. And just when you think the chaos is over, the next target is already on death's radar, waiting for the perfect moment. Kevin Fisher always thought he could cheat fate, but surviving the roller coaster disaster only made him overconfident. Death had other plans, and the subway became the trap that would catch him. The train lurches violently, lights flickering as a blinding flash hits outside. Kevin grips a pole, fighting to stay upright. Windows shatter, sending shards flying while sparks and debris fill the air. The car is thrown into chaos as the speeding train smashes against tunnel walls. Kevin is slammed outward, caught between the train and the concrete wall. The crushing force is sudden and merciless. Screams echo, blood spills, and Kevin's struggle ends in an instant. With the wreckage consuming all around him, Final Destination 3 closes on this brutal note, leaving only the terror of what comes next part. Carter Daniels' death reminded us that holding on to anger and revenge could blind a person to the dangers around them. A tow truck driver haunted by grief and alcohol, he had survived the McKinley Speedway crash, but carried guilt and blamed others for his wife's death. Late at night, Carter was sitting in his truck outside George Lanter's house, drinking and blasting music. A horseshoe swung from the rearview mirror, hitting the radio and nudging the truck into motion. Unaware of the danger, he stepped out to grab a cross and shovel, while the heavy chain in the truck bed began to unspool. Sparks flew as he struggled with it, wrapping around his ankle. The truck accelerated, dragging him at high speed. Flames ignited, and a crash with a parked car triggered a massive explosion, leaving his body charred and dismembered. From the chaos of Carter's fiery end, attention shifted to the tragic fate of George Lanter. George Lanter, a security guard who survived the McKinley Speedway crash, quickly learns that escaping death only delays the inevitable. Safety was never truly his to keep. After seeing Jonathan Groves crushed at the hospital, George walks outside with Nick, shaken and uneasy. He mentions a strange sensation, something his wife once called a warning. Their conversation is cut short. Out of nowhere, a red and blue ambulance speeds around the corner. Its siren is silent. There is no time to react. The vehicle strikes George with devastating force, sending him flying across the street. Nick narrowly avoids the impact, frozen in horror, as blood splatters the ambulance and pavement. Even a few steps from safety cannot save him. Death's relentless plan moves on, targeting Andy Cuser. Andy Cuser learned too late that surviving one disaster doesn't guarantee safety. A confident mechanic, he had cheated death at McKinley Speedway, but his luck was running out. At his auto shop, Andy was confronted by friends warning him of the looming danger. He shrugged it off, joking that working around heavy machinery made him untouchable. Meanwhile, unnoticed hazards began to line up. Sparks from welding flew near a precarious oil can. A van on a lift jolted upward unexpectedly. The can toppled onto gasoline, igniting a growing fire. Flames spread across the floor, while a nearby motorcycle backfired, feeding the blaze. The shop became a dangerous trap of colliding objects and chaos. Then, a massive CO2 tank, loosened by the mayhem, shot across the shop. Andy turned too late. The tank struck him, driving him against a chain-link fence and cutting his body into a horrifying grid. With the garage cleared of this tragedy, the chain of death's design moved forward to the Wynorski. Hunt Wynorski was the kind of guy who relied on luck, and surviving the McKinley Speedway crash only reinforced that false confidence. He didn't realize that cheating death once only delays the inevitable. The scene starts at a crowded public pool. Hunt drops his lucky coin into the water. A child nearby hands him a water gun, and Hunt absent-mindedly sets it on the pool's drainage control, triggering it. When he dives in to grab the coin, the suction from the drain pins him to the pool floor. Meanwhile, a golf ball from a nearby course rolls into a connected pipe, blocking it. The pressure builds quickly, and the drain's pull becomes unstoppable. Hunt's body is horrifically torn apart as the water turns crimson around him, leaving swimmers and bystanders screaming in terror. Hunt's death shows how fragile survival can be when death is already in motion. And as the chaos of the pool settles, the focus shifts to Jonathan Groves, who is about to face his own shocking fate. Jonathan Groves, a rugged, modern-day cowboy, learned the hard way that surviving a disaster does not mean escaping death. The McKinley Speedway crash spared him once, but it only delayed what was coming. After the crash, he was hospitalized, injured but unaware that death was already planning. Upstairs, a patient knocks over a cart holding a container of bubbles, them across the floor. Water from the bathtub leaks, mixing with the bubbles to create a slick hazard. An IV stand rolls uncontrollably, touching a power outlet and triggering sparks. The ceiling-mounted television above Jonathan is dislodged, and the combination of water and heavy electronics weakens the ceiling. Jonathan senses something is wrong and tries to call for help, but before anyone can reach him, the ceiling collapses. The bathtub and TV crash onto him, crushing him instantly. From this horrifying end, attention shifts to Samantha. The next victim death is set to claim. Nick, Lori, and Janet thought they had cheated death, surviving both the Speedway crash and the mall explosion. But fate does not forgive. Nick, the college student plagued by premonitions, and his friends arrive at a cafe, hoping for a moment of normalcy. Lori, always caring, and Janet, cautious yet skeptical, sit together unaware of what is closing in. Small signs signal danger. A loose screw on scaffolding outside shifts slightly. Nick notices unsettling images and messages inside, warning them of what's to come. He tries to convince Lori and Janet to move, but it is too late. The scaffolding collapses, forcing a truck to swerve and crash directly into the cafe. The impact is immediate and brutal. Lori is decapitated, Janet crushed, and Nick thrown violently against a wall. Survival was never theirs to keep. The relentless chain of death continues beyond this tragedy. A devoted mother saved from the McKinley Speedway crash, she had survived when Nick O'Bannon's premonition prompted a chaotic evacuation. Samantha Lane's gratitude was real, but cheating death painted a target on her back. Her death showed how even a moment of safety could be fleeting. That day, Samantha was sitting in a salon chair, trying to relax while her hair was done. Small mishaps started to pile up. The chair jolted, a ceiling fan wobbled as water dripped onto it, and sparks flew. Outside, her sons were playing near a smoking lawnmower, unknowingly sending a rock into its exhaust. As Samantha stepped out to leave, the rock shot from the mower like a bullet. It struck her in the eye instantly, killing her in front of her children. From the horror of Samantha's sudden death, attention shifted to the next victims. In Final Destination 5, the deadly design of death continues as survivors from the North Bay Bridge collapse face their inevitable fates. Candace Hooper, a talented gymnast, thought she had escaped when the bridge fell. Surviving only placed her on death's list. In the gymnastics studio, she begins her routine on the uneven bars while her boyfriend Peter watches, unaware of the deadly chain reaction above. Condensation from a faulty air conditioner loosens a screw in the ceiling. The screw falls onto a balance beam, where another gymnast lands awkwardly and knocks over a container of powdered chalk. The resulting dust cloud blinds Candace mid-routine. She releases the bars, landing face first on the gym floor. Her spine snaps, and her legs bend unnaturally. Peter rushes over, but it is too late. Candace's death is a brutal reminder. Escaping fate only delays it. Next, death's attention turns to Roy Carson. Roy Carson, it had fatal consequences. The angry factory worker confronts his supervisor, Isaac, on a high catwalk, completely unaware of the real danger above. As they argue, sparks rain down from a faulty overhead crane until a massive hook snaps loose. Isaac shoves Roy to save him, but it's no use. The hook swings past them, then arcs back with terrifying momentum. It catches Roy perfectly under the chin, the massive point impaling him straight through the jaw. The hook continues its upward path, brutally bursting out from the top of his skull in a shower of blood. As Roy's life is so horrifically ended, the clock begins ticking for the company's abrasive boss, Dennis Lapman. Dennis Lapman, the arrogant factory boss, was never on the original bridge collapse list. He only enters the picture because he comes to investigate the chaos at his plant. Sometimes being in charge just means you're the first to take the fall. Following Nathan taking Roy's place, the timeline is corrected, and Dennis becomes the next target. He angrily confronts the survivors, completely unaware of the danger he is in. The prior incident with a spinning industrial belt, Sander knocked a wrench loose. When the machine kicks back on, it launches the tool across the room with incredible force. The wrench slams directly into Dennis's face, killing him instantly in a shocking display of brutal efficiency. With the boss now gruesomely dispatched, and aggression begin to boil over. This horrifying sequence proves death never forgets, and the chain of survivors continues. Isaac Palmer, a cocky office worker, thought luck was on his side. His arrogance and recklessness lead him straight into death's next trap. The scene begins with Isaac at a spa, lying on a massage table for acupuncture. Needles pierce his skin as he makes crude jokes, ignoring the danger around him. A burning incense stick drops ash onto a towel. His vibrating cell phone tips over a container of alcohol, which spills and ignites. Panicked, he rolls off the table, driving the needles deeper into his body. Flames spread, and a heavy Buddha statue on a shelf becomes loose. It falls, crushing his skull instantly. Next, the deadly attention shifts to another unsuspecting target in eye surgery. Olivia Castle thought she could improve on perfection, but some things are best left alone. Death certainly doesn't appreciate being cheated. After narrowly avoiding being crushed by a car in the North Bay Bridge collapse, Olivia goes for laser eye surgery to correct her vision. This is where her luck runs out. A freak chain reaction involving a spilled water cooler and a faulty power outlet causes the laser to dangerously malfunction. With the doctor gone, the machine's power surges, gruesomely searing her eyeball and then her hand. In a terrified frenzy, she breaks free, but her panic leads her to stumble backward and crash through the window. Her body hits a car below before landing on the pavement. As a final insult, her dislodged eyeball lands on the street, just in time to be run over by a passing car. With Olivia out of sight, death turns its attention to Sam. Sam Lawton, an aspiring chef, thought he had beaten the system. The crucial lesson here is that death's ledger always gets balanced. Believing he was safe after taking another's life to save his own, Sam boards a flight to Paris with Molly. In a terrifying twist, he discovers they are on Volé Airlines Flight 180, the same doomed plane from the initial premonition that started everything years ago. An engine fire causes the cabin to rupture. Molly is violently sucked out of the hole and gruesomely bisected by the plane's wing. Sam holds on for dear life, but it's no use. The entire aircraft is consumed by a massive explosion, incinerating him in his seat in a horrific blast of fire. With Sam and Molly now just ash in the wind, death turns its attention to another survivor, Peter. Of all the survivors, Peter Friedkin was perhaps the most broken by the disaster, especially after losing his girlfriend Candace. He teaches us that grief can make you do monstrous things. Believing he could steal a full life by killing someone not meant to die, he murders Agent Block. Unfortunately for him, Molly is a witness. His attempt to silence her in a restaurant kitchen turns into a brutal fight when Sam arrives. The brawl is pure chaos, involving hot stoves and deep fryers. Just as Peter is about to kill Molly with a large knife, Sam makes a last-second save. He grabs a large meat spit and impales Peter clean through the chest, ending his desperate rampage. But while the immediate threat is gone, Death's plan now circles back to the final survivor, Nathan Sears. Nathan Sears, a guy who maybe thought he understood death. He's at the bar, remembering a man who passed away. Suddenly, two men start chatting, reminiscing about their deceased friend, a man named Roy. The bar has pictures of Roy. And of course, this isn't a friendly chat. Turns out, Roy died of a burst blood vessel. And now it is a good time for Nathan to learn a valuable lesson about death. Nathan and the man have a drink at the bar. Then boom! A huge explosion erupts. The building is coming down. As debris flies everywhere, a hand gets detached. Nathan is right in the blast zone. With the deadly sequence in Final Destination 5 concluded, we now turn to Part 6, where the deaths are even more shocking. This death teaches us that very thing you build for protection becomes your undoing. This is the story of Iris Campbell, a paranoid survivalist who spent years fortifying her remote home against any perceived threat. She created a sanctuary of solitude to shield her family from the outside world. When her estranged granddaughter Stephanie unexpectedly arrives, a frantic Iris rushes out to give her a crucial family survival guide. In her panic to save her granddaughter from what she believes is a dangerous world, she completely forgets about her own defenses. She steps directly onto a pressure plate connected to one of her homemade booby traps. This triggers a modified fire extinguisher, which launches a sharpened metal spike with incredible force. The projectile impales her straight through the mouth, giving Stephanie a horrifying front row seat. From Iris to the next, Death was looking for two siblings. Eric and Bobby Campbell are brothers whose family cheated Death decades ago when their grandmother survived a disaster she foresaw. Now, Death is collecting its dues. In a hospital, Eric tries to save his brother Bobby, but his metallic piercings and a nearby wheelchair betray him. An overpowered MRI machine activates, ripping the piercings from his face before violently pulling him and the chair inside, crushing and impaling him. Bobby, crawling on the floor, thinks he's avoided the same fate. However, the machine's magnetic force escalates, ripping a metal coil from a vending machine down the hall. The coil smashes through the glass and hurtles directly into Bobby's head, killing him instantly. With the Campbell brothers' debt paid, another name on the list is about to be called. Darlene, a retired firefighter, used her training to get her family away from the premonition's disaster, but she only led them into another trap. Death proves that a protector's sacrifice can be part of the design. The sequence began with a frayed plant hanger, a small detail that triggered a massive explosion. The blast violently flipped their RV into a ditch that quickly filled with water. Pinned and severely injured, Darlene fought through the fire and rising water to save her son, Charlie. She told him to save his sister, believing she could hold on. Her heroic final act was cut short when a burning utility pole collapsed, crushing her instantly. Darlene's selfless effort was tragically pointless, leaving Stephanie and Charlie next on Death's list. Stephanie believes her boyfriend Charlie saved her from a previous near-death experience, thinking he brought her back from the dead. However, the truth is that she was never clinically gone. Death feels cheated by this misunderstanding and initiates a plan to correct the error. The trap begins with a simple pinprick on Stephanie's finger. The single drop of blood starts a complex sequence, dislodging a coin that rolls onto a train track and causes a switch to malfunction. This triggers a catastrophic train derailment right in their suburban neighborhood. As they flee the chaos, a huge, blood-soaked plank from a lumber car is launched into the air, crushing both Stephanie and Charlie instantly and horribly. From a single drop of blood to a horrifying crush of wood and bone, Death's plan was painstaking. Their fate was sealed not by chance, but by a design that would not be denied. Death can be a clumsy, chaotic series of minor mistakes, as it was in the case of Howard. Howard Campbell was a beloved father just trying to enjoy a family barbecue. His fate was sealed by a collection of small mishaps started by his daughter-in-law. She moves a rake, which leads to a domino effect. Sprinklers turn on, making the grass slick and causing a Jenga tower to fall, which knocks over a drink. A sharp piece of ice lands upright in the grass. Howard steps on it, cries out, and stumbles backward into the rake. This pulls the starter cord on a nearby lawnmower. He slips on the wet ground, falling directly into the path of the now running machine, leading to a horrifyingly graphic end. From a happy party to a gruesome demise. His wife, busy at the grill, is next. Julia Campbell thought she was above it all. Here's a grim reminder that death has a perverse sense of humor. Just moments earlier, she was ridiculing the idea of a death curse. Then, as if on cue, a garbage truck appears. It starts collecting bins, and suddenly, one of them flings Julia high into the air. She lands inside the dark, cavernous compactor, trapped amidst the trash. The truck driver, engrossed in his dating app, is oblivious. The massive metal plate starts to close, pushing the refuse, and Julia deeper inside. She struggles, screaming in terror. Her friend Sam spots her and runs to the truck, reaching in frantically. Just as Sam's hand grabs Julia's, the compactor forces down, and a sickening sound fills the air. Sam pulls back, left holding only Julia's severed arm. The truck drives away, crushing Julia completely.